Welcome to my YouTube channel Programming Dunia. I am Abhishek Bandil. Today I am going to discuss about the monolithic and microservices architecture. In this video, we will cover what is the monolithic architecture and what is the microservices architecture. And also we will cover which architecture we should use to the which application and what are the advantage, disadvantage, respective monolithic and microservices architecture. Okay, firstly, we can start what is the monolithic architecture. In the monolithic, like in the previously last few years, we are using the monolithic architecture, and nowadays we are moving to the microservices. So in the monolithic, like we have a single architecture, like single exe, where we are going to contain the multiple layers. We have a presentation layer, we have a service layer, and persistent layer, and we have a single database which is going to connect with the persistent layer. So like a single exe contain to each and everything. That is called to the monolithic architecture. Mono single. Because the name of the monolithic is start with the mono. Mono is the single. Like we have a single application who can contain everything. If we talk about the microservices architecture, if we can start with the micro, that means they have multiple microservices. Small services we have, and each and every services in respect to their have a DB. And each and every services contain the presentation layer, service layer, and persistent layer. So what are the so here what is happening in respect to the monolithic? Each and every microservices contain the everything. So that is called to the microservices architecture. Even also in there I have a independent DB. So is it clear to everyone like what is the micro service architecture? What is the monolithic? I can give you the example on that, how we can use to the monolithic and microservices. So I'll take the example of the airline domain. In the case of the airline domain, generally if you know about the airline domain, if you don't know, then I'll explain you here also. Like we have a three type of category. Generally, it's happened. Maybe n number of category could be possible, but in the three type of category in the airline, like in the passenger, like the particular passenger getting flying. So it could be come to the passenger category. In the cargo, if we are going parcel some uh, parcel from one places to another places, like one country to another country and one places through the airline. And miscellaneous, if we talk about apart from the passenger and cargo, like we are want to filling fuel in the airport, and also some miscellaneous activity can be happen during the airport. And so, so in this here we have a three category in the airline domain. If we talk about the monolithic, in the monolithic, what we can do, we can create one project, one solution file who can contain all three category. So what happened, like whenever we are application are getting increased, it's quite difficult to manage the things because the only one application contain everything. So this is the monolithic. If we talk about the microservices in the same domain, then what I will do it and what we will do it, we will create the three microservices, different microservices. It could be the passengers, it could be the cargo, and it could be the miscellaneous. So what happened in that case, like in the later on we can get some other requirement, other type we can get it, then we can add this data to the respective different microservices. Now also each and every services, they have their own component and own DB on that part. So this is the monolithic and microservices architecture. I can just take the one of the any of domain so that you can understand easily. So let's discuss what is the advantage and disadvantage, because monolithic have also some advantage and some disadvantage, and also the microservices, they have also some advantage and disadvantage. Let's discuss one by one. In the monolithic architecture, we have some advantage. So it's simplicity. In simplicity, that is monolithic architecture relatively simple to design and implement it, and also like easier for developer to understand and work with you on that, and easy to debug. Like it's quite easy because we have a single application, easily we can debug the application. Few integration issue, like we have a single application, there are no different component like as the microservices, so we should not get much more integration issue. We are just adding the references of the other component, we are using the application, we are not using to like any of queue mechanism for the Kafka and Revit MQ for integration for that. So in the monolithic, we can get very less integration issue. and better performance. So monolithic application can have a better performance since there are no overhead associated with the inter-process communication between the component. That means there are no inter-process communication between components, so that it could be possible we can get the better performance. It's depend on how we are going to write the code. Easier to deploy, okay, easier to test. So easily we can test the application, and lower complexity. The complexity is very less because of we have a single application where we are using everything in there. And also one more advantage, easier to deploy. Easier to deploy, it means like we can deploy single application, does not require to different component we need to deploy on that. So it's quite easy to, you can deploy the application. These are the monolithic advantage. Now we can discuss about the monolithic architecture disadvantage. What are the disadvantage of monolithic architecture? We can discuss one by one. So we have some of the disadvantage like limited scalability. So in the monolithic application can be difficult to scale the horizontally as all components are the tightly coupled and scaled as a single unit. So this can be limit the ability to handle the increase the traffic and load. So this is the one of the disadvantage in the monolithic application. We can increase the scalability, but it's a limited number of scope because they are the tightly coupled. But in case of the microservice, it's a loosely coupled. I will explain on that part also. Okay. Single point of failure. Single point of failure in the monolithic architecture because we have a single unit. So in the single unit, whenever it get failed, then whole application will be the slow, will be the go down. Like I have already explained you, like we have a three type of in the airline domain, like passengers, cargo, and miscellaneous. It can be possible there are some error into the miscellaneous. So we are getting the exception through. Then all other like passenger and cargo are go down. So this is the one of the disadvantage of monolithic architecture. And development complexity. As application grow in the size and complexity, it can be become more challenging to develop because test and maintain the application. Because what is happening, like if your application size are getting grow, then it could be possible you are getting difficult to develop the application because we have a n number of component. We should not be understand like what component are going to do. And slow development. Slow development simply like we are going to deploy our application a single unit, like the entire application we are going to deploy at once. So definitely it would be the slow deployment. Okay, and slow deployment. Yeah. Okay. Next we can discuss about the microservices architecture advantage. So we have already discussed about the monolithic architecture advantage. Now we are going to discuss about the microservices architecture advantage. So in the advantage we talk about scalability. Like in the monolithic we have a limited scalability, but now we can increase the scalability n number of times. Whatever we want, we can increase as a horizontal. So in the microservices architecture allows the application to scale horizontally while adding and removing the service as needed without affecting other part of system. This can help the application handle the increased traffic and load. Like I can give you the same example. Like we have two microservices initial level like passengers and cargo. Later on we want to increase one more microservice that could be miscellaneous. So we can scale our application. Fault tolerance. Since each microservices is separate process, I told you like we have a three microservices, one passenger, cargo, and miscellaneous. If miscellaneous get failed, then cargo and passenger will continually work on it. So it will not get impacted on that part. So each and every component they have their failure on that fault tolerance. So this is the one of the biggest advantage of microservices architecture. Better scalability, I told you before, like we have a loosely coupled code, easily we can increase the scalability and ability. And better development experience. So like developer experience in talk about in the microservices, like we have a three component: passengers, cargo, and miscellaneous. if I am working on the passenger component, so I should not worry about the cargo and miscellaneous component. I should not know about the entire system in the microservices, because I am worried on that part only, the passenger component. And who is working the cargo, then they should worry about the cargo. So it's very to development experience. And also, if we can add some of the point like deployment, it's very easy to deployment because of we have a like micro component is there. Like, so we, if we are going to deployment a single components, we should not worry about to the other component. And also very fast deployment we can do it, because we does not require to deploy the whole application at a once. If we are going to deploy the passengers, so we should not worry about the cargo and miscellaneous part. And one more advantage I can discuss here, like in the microservices, if we are going to change to the one component, then we can deploy the only this component. We should not be deploy the whole application at once. But they have some of the disadvantage also. So let's discuss some of the disadvantage here. So in the case of the disadvantage, they increase the complexity because we have a multiple microservices. It can be the more complex to design and develop to the test and deploy the then deploy the monolithic architecture. So they have a different services. Communication overhead, since microservices are decoupled, so they need to be communication each other using to the API and messaging system. Messaging system, like we already discussed about the Kafka and RabbitMQ, we can use any of them for the communication between two microservices. So it will increase the overall of the communication. Increase the infrastructure requirement. Like we have a multiple microservices, so we require the load balancer, we require the API gateway, and also we require some service discovery tool also. So these are the things we require to develop the microservices. Increase operational overhead, because we have a different components, so we have to monitoring the logging, debugging for each and every component. They have a different log also. Higher cost, definitely, like if we have many things we need to manage, then definitely we cost could be higher on that. And integration issue definitely could be because of we are going to interact each other of microservices. It could be the integration issue. So this is the like what are the disadvantage of the microservices. So based on that we can take decision which we can go with the monolithic and microservices. Both are the good, they have some advantage disadvantage, and so based on that we can take the decision. Okay, thank you so much. If you like my video, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.